looking forward to a wonderful morning with all of you. And we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday. So just to get us in a present mode, one of the best ways that you can do that is just a little silent meditation. Take you into that space. Instead of going right into the mind, right? Let's go right into the heart, which is the place that we really want to stay all the time. And that's really where everything is happening. So let's just take about 3 minutes to get ourselves fully present, and I'll share with you just a few things that you can do that can make it a little bit easier for you to go into that space. And we'll sit for just 3 or 4 minutes just to bring all of our attention here to the present moment. So get into any position that you feel comfortable, and then you can sit for about 5 minutes, and just take a moment or two to deeply relax. Close your eyes very gently as if you're going to sleep. And as your eyes are closed, then just take a scan through your body. To release and relax any tensions. So tensions actually prevent us from being present. Physical tensions. The more physical tensions we are, the more unpresent we become, the more distracted. So we want to just take a moment to loosen up that neck, release those shoulders, soft belly. And you'd be surprised how much tension we carry in the face and the jaw, and even in the eyes, actually. Just take a moment to relax all of those facial muscles, and then work with your torso, let your torso relax. And it's working when you notice that all of a sudden you're not fighting gravity as much. And then just bring your attention to what we call the seat of the soul, lying directly between your two eyes. In the center of your forehead, look into the field of awareness, lying directly in front of you. And just begin to repeat whatever words that you have been chosen, could be names of God or names of divinity or anything that you feel comfortable repeating that focuses you in the present moment. And I will bring you out with the sound of my voice in just about 3 or 4 minutes. So let us begin. So good morning, everybody. Yes, thank you. Question?
That's the hardest part for me, is being completely present. And that sometimes my mind starts wandering, and I start to get it, and then all of a sudden I'm gone, and then I bring myself back.
Okay. Welcome to the club. That's why it's about the journey and not the destination. Someone asked this question just before we're leaving about trying to be more present, and we start worrying about getting to the goal quickly. Because we want to get there quickly. We want to be there. But that's part of the very subtle distractions that the mind offers to get you away from the present moment again. A simple definition of being present is stop analyzing, stop judging, stop critiquing, and stop assuming. Those 4 things are the immediate things that happen when we get out of the present moment. So you're in the right place because this is what the whole weekend's about. But it's a journey, and it's something that we have to work on. And I keep using these phrases again and again, habituated, reactive, and conditioned ways of thinking and being that keep us from that present consciousness. And what happens when you sit, of course, is that it seems to be going very nicely, and then all of a sudden you get bombarded, right? And the thoughts start coming from left and right, and you never knew you had these thoughts, and where did they all come from, and God knows, right? One minute you're in London, the next minute you're in Siberia, and then you're back in Kripalu. You know, they're just bombarded. Okay? What we're learning in that process, so when I say welcome to the club, actually that's lesson number 1. That's the first most important lesson you can learn about ourselves, is that the mind is constantly sending us thoughts. That's what it does. And when you know that, now you've made the first step. You've graduated from the state of unconscious awareness about ourselves to a conscious awareness of what really is going on all the time. When our eyes are open, guess what? It's still sending us thoughts. They're still coming, but we don't hear them all. We only hear them when we pay attention to them. But if you're in the present moment, they stop. If you're fully doing a task, they stop. Because you can't do the task if you're not there. But there are unfortunately a lot of tasks that you can do where they just keep coming up because you don't require the full attention to do something, or you don't give your full attention to something. And so you don't give your full attention to them. Again, the task doesn't get quite completed, but you also start hearing the litany of thoughts. The best example I can give is this: when people meet and greet, first time they say, hello, how are you? Which is all mechanical. And even the facial expressions are mechanical. You ever watch people? If you slow down enough to watch people, you'll see. And then 2 minutes later, people say, well, what was that? What did they say? Because we weren't really there when we asked them their name. We were thinking about our own agendas in the back of our head. That's how pervasive it is. And so you have to make a really strong room. That's what we're here to try to break through some of that mechanical, robotic, kind of unconscious behavior. It's like we are all like ships passing in the night. We're not really present. One of the exercises that I'm going to send you home with is what we call conscious and compassionate listening skills, which is that you're going to listen, which we never do, without any agenda, to your spouse or your partner, whoever you're close with. Simply because you want to be 100% present for that person with no agenda. You're not trying to convince them. You're not trying to do anything except hear them so much so that you feel them. Those are the kind of exercises that get you back into the moment. Most of the time what's happening when we're communicating is we've got our sentence already ready to go. And we just can't wait till they finish their sentence. And most of the time we get to interrupt anyways because, yeah, we know what they're going to say anyways, right? So why bother listening? Let's just get out what we need to get out and move on. So that's the kind of the way the mind thinks. And that's kind of the ego-based. And we're all there. That's just human condition, right? That's the human nature. But what we want to do is get into another place. So we're going to work on that. And some of the things that we're going to be doing will help us reflect a little bit. I mentioned already a couple of things to start with, to be very practical, which is reflect at the end of every day. The purpose of that reflection is not to beat yourself on the head or the back. It's not a mea culpa, I'm terrible, I'm a horrible person, no. It's to coach yourself. But the coaching is really all about bringing it into the present moment. So when you begin to do that practice over months and even years, all of a sudden, you're no longer doing it just at the end of the day, you're doing it all the time. You're watching that mind and you're controlling it because you're watching. And that's that inner coach, that's that witness consciousness. And even neuroscience is saying the same thing now, saying that you have that ability to stand back from your thoughts and watch your thoughts. And that's the step that we're moving. So yesterday we talked about getting out of the rat race. Just to recap, we started talking about getting out of the rat race mentality, right? Which is trying to do more and more in less and less time. So that's one very practical step that we can take with us when we go here. What can you cut back from our busy lives? That's not essential. And what is taking away from our peace, which is the most valuable possession we have, really. And that's, again, a reflective activity you do when you get home. You can do it when you're here, and you say, okay, what do I really need not to do in my life? I call it the not to do list. Because we all have the to-do list. And the to-do list seems to go on it never stops, you know. You've always got things to do. So what about the not to do list? And you'll notice as your not to do list gets bigger, your to-do list has got to get smaller sometime. So you can start with things like that, right? And then yesterday we also talked about accepting life as it is. That the resistance that we put to what's coming to us, again, keeps us from the present moment, and what's the teaching in the moment. And that is very, very important. So just to be totally accepting of what's happening, and to the teaching that is being given to us, even if it is painful. And of course, ironically, our moments of greatest growth are always the moments where there's the most torment and suffering. Because that's where we get out of our unconscious behavior. That's where all of a sudden you can't just be the robot that you normally are, that we normally are on a daily basis. Because life is asking us to do more than that in that moment, to tap into resources that we didn't think we had. So, and just to continue where we're going to go with this morning, we're talking about what techniques can we use to bring more joy into our lives in the present moment, because that's the only place that you can experience joy. Although there's a little trick to this. Really deeply felt moments in our lives of love or compassion or mercy or just intense moments have the capacity to be relived in the moment again just as intensely. And this is not sentimentality. This is re-entering what I call moments of eternity, which are really the moments that are living presently. You go back into that space. Something triggers you, but it brings you back into that space. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. But I wanted to summarize kind of, and reiterate, if you want a little mantra for the weekend, 3 sentences. One of them is be here now. Does anyone remember Ram Dass back in the 60s and 70s and 80s? Okay. Ram Dass is a friend of mine. Wrote a book called Be Here Now, which was kind of like Introduction to Spirituality 101 in the 60s. And there's a lot of wonderful stuff in that book, and there's a lot of stuff that is just way out. But he was exploring his own spirituality at the time. But he got one part right, which is be here now. He got that part right. The second part is a phrase that was repeated by a spiritual teacher who came to the West, who actually did not come to the West, but whose message kind of got to the West. A man named Mayor Baba. Anyone remember that name? Okay. So he had a saying called, "Don't worry, be happy," which I have slightly altered to "be happy now." So be here now, be happy now. And the third one, which, by the way, only comes after the first two, because you can't get to the third, is be loved now. Yeah, be loved now. And you can't really get to the third unless you're being present, and love comes out of a state of deep happiness. a state of deep connection with who we already are. And that's how we enter that state. So that's kind of the 3 bumper stickers that you can remember. And talk about what are the things that you know work in your own lives that bring more joy into your life. And we're going to use the collective wisdom of the group, because there's always a tremendous amount of wisdom in the group. And share what is working for us that brings us more joy in the present moment. And to give you a couple of examples that help is when we eat our food, to be fully enjoying the food. Taking a very banal example, but a really, really important one. We are a fast food nation. We're also eating our food fast. And we're not enjoying it because we're not putting any attention into the food. So people are watching TV while they're eating. People are engaged in all kinds of incredible conversations while they're eating. And what happens is that you actually are not enjoying the food because you're not tasting it. What you're doing is we're in our mental worlds. We're all over the place. And when that happens, 2 things actually. First of all, you don't really digest the food properly. Second of all, you don't really masticate the food properly, which is really essential. And third of all, you don't taste the food. So such a simple thing, right? But we don't do it. So one practice that you can do, just starting your day out and really being conscious about eating. Actually, it extends even before that, being conscious about preparation and eating. And I'm not saying you can't speak while you're eating, but you're really focused on the food. And you're really focused on enjoying it. And we don't get into these huge bombastic conversations. You'll notice that when we don't put our full attention into eating, we want to eat more and more. Because actually what's happening is you're not triggering in your body the feeling that you're done because you haven't tasted the food. And we're not paying attention to the body's natural communication to us that you're full, because we're not aware of the body. So, talking about mental awareness, we're talking about emotional awareness. There's body awareness too. People are really aware of their body and its needs. They know before they're going to get a headache. They know when they're going to get a headache. They know when they're exhausted, and they take steps to not get into that place of deep exhaustion. They can feel when the body is distracting. They know when they're hungry and when they're not hungry, when they're just eating out of distraction or out of other emotional needs. That's body awareness. It's the same thing. You're really attentive, your body speaks to you very, very clearly and very profoundly, and tells you, even if you listen carefully, the kinds of food. Because we all are on different time zones and different energy levels and so on and so forth. So that was an example. So let's reconvene as you like here in groups of 4, but this time new groups, alter it slightly, introduce yourself again to your new partners, and someone in the group take note on where we have been successful, where we really know this works for us or has worked in the past. Good? Okay, so I'll let you self-select your groups, but just mix it up and get to know everybody here, okay? So we'll do this for about 4 or 5 minutes, then we'll come back, we'll share, and then we'll get into the next part.
Remembering what the court
I've been watching your conversations, and did you all know that you were smiling a lot?
Yes.
Did you notice that?
Yeah.
And laughing and smiling a lot. Tells you something about what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Put your attention on the positive, and all of a sudden, this is what happens. So I'd like to continue that conversation, we're gonna ask you to send someone up from your group. I see we've reconvened in 5, which is very nice. And to share out some of the wisdom that you have garnered from each other. Just put it up here, and if you are motivated to write it down, I'm sure we're gonna have some wonderful things that come out of this. So why don't we get going? Any group would like to start? Okay. That's Diane, right?
Yes. We had quite a long list.
Oh,
Do you want
good.
it all?
Put as many as you like up there. We have time, I'm sure.
Okay. So the first thing that came out was animals, just, brushing animals, spending time with them.
Love therapy, we call
Yep.
Yes.
Just being with our kids,
it.
watching, my son, he's 5.5, and he literally will stop and, smell the flowers, and, at first I'd be like, come on, we gotta go, it's like, no, this is it, he's making me stop, so that's good. Exercise, doing things for ourselves.
Specifics, any of that?
Like exercise or meditation,
Okay. Nurturing stuff.
meeting with friends, purposefully meeting with friends and socializing. Cooking,
Okay. Yes.
learning new things.
Okay.
One person in our group, I love to take naps too, but sleeping, but she makes it more of an event, like, the shower and maybe the candle and the lavender smell. And,
Nice.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And getting out into nature. I mean, this place is a wonderful example of why that's so important.
Yeah.
Just peacefulness and,
Mhm.
and then, I said family, because we live
Mhm.
far from them, so when we do get together with them, it's nice. And then we talked about, I thought this one was really neat, rituals. The two that were brought up in our group were like, they do fires every night. They have a fire every night, and the family gathers around it, or even just watching a candle. I think, just having that, maybe, I think she said, sitting with the dog and in front of a fire, I mean, you can't get much more comfortable than that and relaxing. And then the other one was, if the parents have passed away, and so every year on their birthday, they'll send a balloon up with a message on it, and with the thought that the angels take the message up to them or to God, so,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Mm.
Wow, nice.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Next group. All right. Thank you, Diane.
We agree with all of these.
Okay. Oh, good.
All came up for us.
I don't have anything to say. Except we have some
Another
neat ones.
possibility too is using our creativity
Mhm.
to center ourselves, for instance. And when I say creativity, I happen to be an artist, but somebody might be a computer programmer. You might cook. Creativity comes in all forms.
Mm.
And when we really tap into being in the moment
Mm.
of that creativity,
Mm.
you're a writer as well. You probably research your
Mhm.
history.
Mhm.
All of these things are to me, that creative moment.
Mhm.
And so I would say our creativity brings us joy when we tap into that.
Absolutely, absolutely, that's a huge one. We'll talk more about that.
That was one we talked about. We covered many of the same things that you did. Another thing was the attitude that we bring.
Okay.
And that came up in a talk this past week for Sherry. And I said to her, actually, one of the things I can kick this off because sometimes I wake up in the morning and I have this kind of a gray feeling. And I think about it and I recognize it. And I say, good things are going to happen. And just that kind of that little shift of attitude.
Mm.
And it just changes the way I start my day. So it is just a little thing. And it's so I would say shift of attitude.
Okay, yeah.
is there anything that I've missed?
Piano, music,
The music?
she likes to play the
Right.
piano,
Okay.
and beautifying a space.
Beautiful.
And actually probably listening to music too,
Okay.
being totally present when you're doing that.
Kind of goes under subheading of creativity, because music is a creative pursuit.
And gardening, we talked
And
about gardening.
gardening, all right. Our organic gardeners, touche.
Anything else? Did I miss?
Great, wonderful, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Some new stuff, okay, let's, last group here, anyone?
You can just add a few things.
Add a few, I'm sure you may agree with some of
But
those
yeah.
already, yeah.
Um, Cooking.
Cooking, oh, we got that, yeah, we got that.
I'm sorry, I meant cleaning.
Cleaning. Okay. There are some people who may not.
That's right.
Joy.
Brings me
Good joy. Of course.
Yes, absolutely. It's, I think it's the fact of, and you can put ironing down there as well. It's the fact
Ironing, okay, ironing.
of getting something accomplished.
Ironing.
You set out getting wrinkles out, and then you get the wrinkles out. After you iron, it's like, yes.
Those are the attitudinal wrinkles.
Okay, wait, oh, the out of doors, communicating with trees.
Of course.
This is a
Hugging the
great
trees.
place.
Sure.
Okay, so
Sure.
let's say, this one's out of doors.
Nature up there, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And experience out here, go to the evergreens.
Mm.
And it's the wind and look, and then someone's laying down like on a hammock and looking up at the trees. Look at and watch them move and let them talk. They do. And listen.
Mm.
The creativity, someone said like, they like to, just whatever happens, like improvisation, just
Spontaneous.
spontaneous.
Being spontaneous.
Because that's how your mind is.
Yes, yes.
So,
Okay, that's
spontaneous.
great. That's great, I like that, I really like that.
Did I spell it right now?
Getting out of the
It's
habituated
close.
grooves.
It's done phonetically. Close.
Spontaneity, that's good enough.
Being free.
Being free.
Oh, some exercises, naturally yoga,
Mhm.
qigong and tai chi.
Absolutely.
So,
Any kind of martial arts,
yes.
mind, body connections, yeah, which is what yoga is.
Tennis.
And qigong is the meditative part.
Yeah.
But you're still moving.
Mhm.
I think that's it. Did I forget anything?
That's great.
I think we could underline listening.
Oh, yes. Very
Whether
good.
it be
Ooh, I love that. Thank you,
trees.
thank you, someone came up
Where
with
is
that.
it? Did you put that down?
Just, no, just right now, yeah, I don't think it's there, and it's
Yeah.
the word itself.
Good stuff. That's it.
Wonderful, thank you. So, let's take a moment and reflect. Clearly, there are many ways that we can bring joy in our lives. Many ways that we know already work. One of the things you want to think about is what is on this list that you're not doing, that you want to experiment with and you want to try, or to expand your joy list a little bit from what you're already doing, so that you have more of those in a day. And here's the trick. You have to do it consciously. You have to make the effort to say, this, I'm going to do this. Because if you don't, the nature of the mind is that we're going to slip back into the routines that are already set for us because they've already been pre-programmed. So it's kind of like you boot up the computer in the morning, or whenever you boot it up, and there's a bunch of software systems that are already loaded up into that computer. As soon as you turn the computer on, the software systems start working. And the human brain is the same thing. As soon as you wake up in the morning, all of these tape loops of who we think we are, that's based on our previous thoughts, where we start right up. So we have the tape loop of hurry and worry. We have the tape loop of agitation and restlessness. We have the tape loop of depression and anger and fear and doubt. And they boot up right with us in the morning. So what we're really doing with this exercise, and that's why you have to do it consciously, is you are now going to so to speak, take out the old tape loops and put some new in. And to make that tape loop work, you've got to do it consistently. You've got to make it into a new tape loop, something that's going to work for you. So if you do it only once and you don't do it again, it's not going to work. You'll have that one moment, it's great, but it's not going to go anywhere, because the existing tape loops will reboot the next morning and go right back to where you were before. And this is part of the answer to your question about the mind, right? So you're present for a while, and then all of a sudden the old stuff comes in. So what we're learning here, and we'll talk more about, is how do you create habits, positive habits, that work for you. In other words, using the mind and the attribute of the mind, which is habit, to your advantage. Yeah.
I think in the past what's been frustrating for me is that seems like a very daunting task when you look at it over weeks or months or years. And so I guess that's very much not in the moment, but how do you break it down into kind of manageable chunks? Is it one day or?
Yeah, we call it like SMART goals.
Right,
Something
achievable.
something that's achievable, realistic, and attainable in your daily schedule. And that's where you have to go back and say, well, where am I going to make this happen? But if you don't actually consciously make that decision, the old tape loops just make all the decisions for you. And
Would you say it
you're
gets easier?
What?
Would you say it gets easier over
It
time?
definitely gets easier.
Okay.
My experience is that if we take the time to do it, because it's important to us, all right, then the general rule is this: 30 days, 40 days to create a habit. That's the general rule. Consistently do it for 30 or 40 days, it becomes a habit. If you do it for a year or two, it becomes part of your nature, which means that if you don't do it, you'll automatically gravitate to it. And that's how you do it. So you're doing it incrementally, all right? The key thing is the regularity of it, all right? So, and you can't do everything, but you work with what really seems to resonate with you, all right? If ironing wrinkles really works for you, go for it.
Try it.
All right?
Okay.
Because what it is that activity is bringing you into the moment for some reason. And you're focused on it. For whatever reason that in your past that worked and it's still working, use it. And continue to build on whatever existing things work. I mean, obvious things like taking walks in nature. Taking the time to take walks in nature is where you have to adjust your schedule. Getting up in the morning and sitting for meditation, getting up in the morning and having a prayer of positive intention, all right? Every single day that becomes part of your routine, all right? And that's not so hard. It takes 3 or 4 minutes, but that positive intention, that attitude and shift that you talk about is really what you're doing. And you're setting a tone for the day. You're sending a message out, this is what I want my day to be, all right? And that is both a conscious method, a conscious message, but it's also setting up a subliminal message too, right? So the mind is an amazing thing because whatever you put into it, it's going to send back to you eventually, right? So we're getting all of these subliminal messages from these thought forms that we've had all the time. So what happens, they just pop up inadvertently all the time. For example, just to give you an example. If you listen to a piece of music again and again and again, what will happen is one day you'll be walking down the street and all of a sudden you start hearing and seeing, then even singing this tune, all right? This happens during the Christmas season a lot, right? Because you hear certain songs a lot, and all of a sudden you're walking down the street and start singing this tune. My God, I don't even like that tune. And you're starting to hum it. Why? Because you've heard it so much. And it's in there, so it's just coming up, it's just bubbling up. So what we're trying to do is kind of put the stuff in there that we want back. Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you create a new loop and replace it with the old? What's the actual process of creation and replacing it?
Okay. So I call it scripting, all right? I call it scripting. And you're kind of jumping ahead, we're going to do this, we're going to do this later in the afternoon as well, but let's jump into it. You've already started the process right here of identifying what works for you. And I want to deepen that process a little by suggesting a couple of other things that I think are very important for all of us to see. These are all wonderful and great, and the list could be expanded. And if they work for you, they work, and that's wonderful. Not all will work for everybody. The first thing we have to realize, though, is that happiness is not contingent, or joy is not contingent upon anything you're doing. It's brought out by the attention you put into whatever you are doing. You are joy already. Your beingness is joy. So the first step is realizing you're already joyful beings. That when we put our attention wholly and solely into something, that joy bubbles out. It's there already. Let me put it to you in a stronger way. Everything you need to be completely happy and joyful, you already have right now, every one of us. You already have it. You don't need any more money, you don't need more houses, you don't need more relationships. You don't need anything more to be completely joyful and happy this moment, this second. What we need to do is get in touch with who we are. And that's where the mindful awareness comes. The joy bubbles over, bubbles out of us the minute we put our full attention into anything. And the example of which is the following. Let's say you go to theater, you love theater, or you love opera, and you're listening to the opera. Spend $100 for the tickets, you better be listening. Right? And you're really enjoying this great operas, you just having a wonderful time. All of a sudden, someone calls you up on the phone during intermission, and you hear that someone very close to you just had a heart attack or something. What happened? All of a sudden your attention switches off of that activity and onto this bad news, and you're feeling the opposite. The joy didn't go anywhere. It's you put your attention on something that took you away from who you are. And that's the conundrum. So how do you stay present when even the bad news is coming? And that's not to be supercilious. That's not to be, not paying attention to that. It's to recognize that it's a different kind of attention that you're putting there. But the joy that you are, the drops of joy that we all are, is still there. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's just a question of where you put your attention. So this is like the underlying principle that we need to really get inside before we start this re-scripting process. And that's hard because I don't think we really believe that. So it takes us a while to really kind of get that and believe it. Because we've been conditioned to believe that we need more of this, and we need more of that, and we need this, and we need that, we need all of these other things in order to be happy and joyful. And so that conditioning, that's the old tape loop, right? Of all of these expectations that society has for us about what we're supposed to be, and so on and so forth, and all the conditions around which to make you an acceptable person in society, right? I want to share with you a little story to drive home how powerful that conditioning is in Western culture. And every culture has its own conditioning and its own limitations. The story of a spiritual teacher who was traveling to give a talk. And on the journey they were going to, this is in India, and if you know anything about India, you know that the roads are anything but what you might call roads. And during this 3 or 4 hour journey, you know, potholes, and, I mean, yeah, have you been to India? Camels, cows, everything. And if there's any bit of pavement, it's rare. And the car got really, really dirty. And so pulled over to clean the car before they went to the talk. It was a mess. And one of the persons who was in the car was asked to have someone at this little gas station kind of thing, service station, to clean the car. So there was someone there who, in Indian society, they used the term peon. It's a kind of pejorative term meaning someone who's at the bottom rung of Indian society, right? Caste-wise as well as monetary-wise. They commissioned this person for like pennies to clean the car. And the person did a fantastic job cleaning the car. And so this teacher said, well, why don't you have him clean the interior? He did such a fantastic job. I'll offer him another, few rupees, and he'll clean the interior for you. So they went back to the guy, who was probably in his 40s or 50s. And they said, well, could you clean the interior of the car? And the guy says, thanks, but no thanks. Said, I have enough rupees for the day. I'm not working anymore.
Good for him.
Okay? Conditioning, right? Conditioning. We think we have not caught up with 1/10 of the blessings that we already have. 1/10, maybe 100th. This is what we talk about conditioning. So everything you are, everything you need to be completely happy, you already have. Let's just enjoy it. Let's be present enough to enjoy it. So that's part of the rescripting process that we are engaged in. The second step of that, since we're jumping right into that, is to take the events in our lives that we know pull us away from that and rescript them. And that is a very, very, very scientific process. It's actually a 5-step process. First, you identify the place where that's going to happen. So where's that in my life? Let's say I lose my center around, let's say, talking about finances. I'm just throwing out anything. And I get into an argument with such and such, okay, whenever that situation comes up, because there's a lot of stress around that, right? And that's the modus operandi that is working around that issue. And this could be any issue. It could be anything that takes us out of our center, that takes us out of our joy, right? And I go into my tape book. Fear and anxiety, what's going to happen to me? I don't know what could happen to me. I'm going to lose everything. That would be horrible. I would be on the street, right? And what does the mind do? Comes up with worst case scenario. This is the nature of mind. Doesn't think about, no, what's the worst case scenario? Goes right to the worst case scenario.
Why?
Okay. Have you read anything about positive psychology? Okay. Positive psychology actually is discovering what the great teachers of humanity have known for a millennia, and that is that the mind is essentially negative. Okay? That's essentially its characteristic. That's what it does. Okay? So that's why we have to be very careful about monitoring the mind. So the mind is going to come up with a worst case scenario. It's going to think, oh, let me see how this, and we're going to project out all of our worst case fears into any particular situation, whether it's finances or anything else, career-wise, and that's just the nature of the mind. So in recognizing that, so what we have to do is we have to say, okay, let's re-script this conversation around this, all right? Let's talk about abundance, right? And the actual process is, let's say it's a conversation that you have with someone, okay? We know the knee-jerk responses that we have, right? And we jump right into those knee-jerk responses like in a nanosecond. And that's what once we get into that knee-jerk kind of conversation, escalates and we got a conflict and we have things blow up out of proportion. So what we need to do is we need to go into that situation very consciously, very mindfully, okay? Mindfully, that's the key word. Non-judgmentally, in the moment, listening. And think about what we're going to say that's going to change the course of that conversation. It's very precise. So you re-script it out, all right? Okay, here's what I'm going to say to respond to that. I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to retaliate with abusive words and threats. If you ever say that again, I'm going to do this. Right? Because we have our whole litany of responses already pre-programmed in there, right? And they just pop out of our head, without any control. So we're going to reprogram what we're going to say, and then we're going to practice it. And it's not going to happen the first time, although there is beginner's luck. All right? It's going to happen as you really want it to happen. When you really believe emotionally that's where you want to be. So the more powerful emotion always wins out over the weaker emotion. And so we're going to literally strip that out and practice it. You can even practice it with your friend if you want. But you're going to go back into that situation very mindfully and very consciously, and you're going to say and act and do things differently. And your spouse or your partner, whoever it is going to say, wow.
Where are you?
Go to
Where
Cornwall
are
every
you?
weekend, yeah.
What weekend was that?
What's your name?
You to go again?
Exactly. Because we don't do that. But that's what you have to do. And you have to be determined to do it. Again, the stronger emotion always wins out over the weaker emotion. So if your passion is to be joyful, if that's what you really want out of life, you'll get it. But we ever want that, right? There is a lot, and this is really sad to say, but it's very true. There's a lot of attachment to negative emotions. A lot of attachment to negative emotions. Negative emotions are very powerful. They're very seductive. We can easily get attached to negative emotions because we haven't experienced the opposite. So that emotion looks really good. It's like people get angry, really abusive, and they say, it feels so great to just let that out of my system. Yeah. And how did the other person feel? Right? People talk like that about anger. Oh, yeah, just needed to vent it, get it out there. And then sometimes there's even that feeling of, like, wow, I'm powerful. Look what I did to that person. No, people have that thought too. Yeah, they do. So, but that's that attachment to that negative emotion. That's the inner rationalization that goes on because we don't want to look at really what we did. Yeah.
Is that like an over-attachment to fight or flight, like the hardwiring of being worried that there's going to be something that eats us, so that's why we do the worst-case scenario thing, but being an evolved species, we don't really need to worry about that? Is that where the negative comes from?
It's totally. I mean, they talk about, neuroscience talks about the 4 brains.
Mm-hmm.
Familiar with the 4 brains? A good book to read that's, by the way, corroborates everything that we're doing this weekend is a book called The Super Brain. It was co-authored by Dr. Tanzi and Deepak Chopra. I don't know how much is Deepak Chopra, how much is Dr. Tanzi, but it's a wonderful book in that it corroborates a lot of what we're saying here. And there's these 4 brains. And what happens is that when you do go into fight and flight, you go into the non-rational brain. You go into because we need to be able to react spontaneously to areas of real, let's say, immediate fear that we need to address. And so there's no thinking going on, you just have to react. It's like, and if we didn't have that, then we probably wouldn't be alive today.
Right. Yeah, perpetuating the...
Because but what happens is that fight or flight response becomes who we are. And we're always in this state of fight and flight. And so what happens is that the body is constant. This is why there's so many stress-related illnesses in our society. So much of our illness is stress-related, because we're always producing these hormones in the body that are associated with fight and flight, and we never get out of that stressful condition. And so what we're doing is completely depleting our immune system. And what happens when you deplete your immune system? Well, first of all, we're not emotionally strong. We become physically weak, and then we get sick. And it just manifests in all kinds of area of sickness. But the first step in that awareness is that we notice that we're emotionally weak. We're emotionally not feeling joy. We're just overburdened. We feel like there's a 10-ton weight on us all the time that we can't shake off because we're not paying attention. So yes, absolutely. And that's really, we're trying to get into the higher brain and really higher consciousness, which is where we can kind of rationally think things out, come up with a solution. All right, we talk about a solution-oriented approach to life, which is very much part of our creative, part of who we are. And there's a very incredible joy in coming to solutions to things, if we can do it in a cooperative way with people, right? And not looking at the other person as the enemy, and trying to solve things and trying to find a solution to things. So it is a process. There's no magic bullet, because we didn't get into the well overnight, and we can't jump out of it overnight. But it's a process. But the beautiful thing is that when we recognize that the joy and the happiness is there for us, then we start to want to make it manifest. Right? You have a question? No?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I know this may not be relevant for many people, but I work as a therapist, and sometimes when you're working with a patient, they don't have the belief that that there's happiness within, and you do meet a lot of resistance with, they sort of want to come in and talk about the problem and all of the angst in their life, and it's hard to get to a point where they have a willingness to look within. And even when you talk about all of this, stuff and what makes you happy and when are you in flow or whatever, there's a lot of that won't work for me, that can't work for me. Don't you realize you're not, and they often feel like there's not an identification with their pain because they just went through a divorce and they're financially strapped. And you don't want to lose the connection with not having the empathy, and yet you feel like session after session after session, you're not moving past the verbiage of my life is miserable and this is where I'm going to be forever. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that kind of pre-contemplation, pre-motivational stage where people are in, where they don't even see the potential for that happiness. And I know you don't have to spend a lot of time with it. It may be relevant for many people, but that's often where I get stuck with clients.
Well, the same thing is true with our relationships, though.
Yeah.
The same thing is true. We often get into that same kind of relationship where our spouse or partner, our friends or family, whatever, that relationship gets stuck in this thing, and it never goes anywhere. But, okay, 100% you start with compassion. Always start with compassion. You always end with compassion. You always lace everything with compassion by being fully present to that person's suffering. And just by being fully present, without agenda, you're going to lessen the load through your own power of empathy and compassion. So this is the amazing thing about humans, that you can walk into the presence of a being who has developed that, even if you didn't say a thing. If you were in the presence of a very compassionate person, you walk away feeling uplifted. Through the power of that person's radiation. Their thought forms are overpowering your thought forms, and you're getting uplifted by that powerful current of joy within them. And we know this. Now they know him. All right? Why do we hang around with certain kind of people? Because we get uplifted. Because we feel peace, because we feel joy. We're not running to the people who are all depressed. Most of us are. We're running away from those people. I'm not saying we should run away from them, but I'm saying what happens is that person, if you are fully present, will get a tremendous boost by your presentness and your empathy and compassion. That's not the end of the journey, all right? They're still gonna, they're gonna get that lift, they're gonna get that boost. You need to give them that boost, and you need to give them that window to look through into something else. At some point or another, though, you have to start offering and say, look, there's what we call the fickle finger of blame syndrome. And you know what that is? Which is the problem is always out there. Oh, it's my husband, it's my wife, it's my job, it's my employer, I've not enough money, I don't have enough this, I don't have enough of that. Everyone's got it. The problem is all out there. Hey, the only person who can change you and me is you and me. You cannot change that person. She, he, whoever it is, has to decide they want to change themselves. You can give them a boost. You can point them in the right direction, but you can't change them. They've got to want it. If they don't want it, there's no power of the universe that even God is not going to do anything. And that's the message you have to convey to them. At what point did they have to take responsibility? Hey, everything we are experiencing is the results of our thoughts, words, and deeds. In the past, and in the present moment, and in the future. But that's incredibly liberating if you give the message in the right way. Because it says, you can change, you will change, it's according to what you want to create. And they need to hear that message. Because that's the message of liberation, that's the message of awakening. People who come to places like Kirpalo have already heard that message. They wouldn't be here if they didn't believe that. If they didn't believe they couldn't change, well, they would be somewhere else. And they'd be hanging out with other people who also don't believe that. So you've got to deliver that message in a powerful way, but you've also got to say, look, take responsibility. All right? And as much as you can be there for them, ultimately it's their journey. And it's their thought forms. So by giving them some techniques, of course, meditation and self-reflection and doing many, many, many of the things that we're just talking about here, all right? And there are many more will come up. They've got to choose to do some of those, right? And as soon as they make that commitment, you've won the battle. They've won the battle. Because it'll start to manifest in little ways. It'll start to manifest. And now they're on the upward spiral. Otherwise, you just continue to descend. And it gets worse and worse and worse. All right, until they take, because there's nobody else who's going to take responsibility for our actions. And by the way, on the other side, they don't ask you what somebody else did. They ask you what you did. All right? We don't get blamed for anyone else's bad actions. We have to take responsibility for our own. And that's just the nature of the universe. So, that's what I would say. And always coming from a place of compassion, of course. Always coming from a place of compassion and always recognizing the moment when you can give the teaching that's appropriate to them. But at some point they have to hear that, you know. And at some point there has to be that taking of responsibility and moving forward.
Yeah, very much so, thank you.
Any other comments, questions on this? Where we're going with this? Okay. So I'm going to suggest a couple of things. You suggested some things here. And I think these are all great. I'm going to suggest that whatever you do, you put your full attention into it. As a starter. Whatever you do, whether it's cooking, or cleaning, or taking walks in nature, or singing. By the way, no one put that up there.
It was up
Singing.
there. We had it, but
Oh, you
it was
did?
under creativity.
Journaling. Creativity, let me just address that. That's very powerful. I'm glad you brought it up. Why? Because creativity, you can only do in the present moment. You got to be present. Whether you're going to be painting or writing a poem or journaling or whatever you're going to do, you've got to be present. And that will bring out innate concentration. And that concentration fills you with joy just in the act of concentrating. So any of these things are going to be useful, but you got to do them. And you got a commitment. And don't overcommit. Commit to a few, And actually, there's a form that you're gonna, a little exercise that we're gonna do before you leave, or the day before, maybe this afternoon, that you're actually gonna write down what you're gonna commit to. We call it the call to action, is the way we've phrased it here, the call to action, all right? So I put down on the call to action into this, start each day with a positive intention, with a prayer, an affirmation, with meditation, and take the time to bring joy into everything that you do. Eating, driving the car, speaking with people. There's tremendous joy in communication, tremendous joy in just being present in communication and sharing another person's space and energy, if you're fully present, if we're fully present to that person. So again, the realization that the joy is already there, we have to bring it out through our own concentration and our focus in on the moment. A phrase that I use for myself is that half-heartedness never reaches to majesty. So if we do anything in a half-hearted way, what do you get out of it? Not too much. Not too much. It's when we put our full being into it. Another example. Well, we all remember those days, many of you probably married, you all have kids now. But remember those days when we were dating and were maybe the first or second date and we're totally enamored of this person, right? You prepared yourself, you got yourself into a good mood, put on some makeup, wear some nice clothing. You did everything to make that event as successful as you could, right? Because you wanted it to be, right? And the same thing is true of anything. So the intention that we put into it, the purity of the intention that we put into the event is what we get back out of it. So we take the time, like you don't want to go on a date and you're not there, Now, challenging these days, with the internet, with our iPods and with our iPads and with our Androids and all of that. Sometimes you go to these cafes, Starbucks being one, or any place, and I saw 2 or 3 people, this happens all the time now in New York City, I don't know about other places, you see 2 or 3 people sitting at a table, and they each have their smartphones, and they're all looking at their smartphones, they're not looking at each other. Every once in a while, they look up, they have to go back into the smartphone. So we have replaced, literally, reality with virtual reality. No joke, that's exactly what's happening. Again, how? Because we get addicted to these technologies. They take us out of the moment. We're walking down the street, people are on the phone, they're walking, they're listening, they're bumping into people. They're totally not present. Right?
They're gonna come up with computer addiction, like
Right.
this is gonna be that.
It is already that.
There is!
It is already that.
Social
I didn't
anxiety
know
in
that.
college kids, mess.
I've dealt with a lot of, in college, and what I see happening is that the social skills
None.
are just not there anymore. Don't know how to interact.
And the anxiety, the social anxiety,
Yeah.
because they don't know how to, there's no body language, there's no communication, there's no interpretation. They are a mess.
Exactly. That's exactly my observation. And I think it has to do with that through this communication you get control, because you have
And
more
false
control.
control.
It's all about control, and there's no actual communication. Right? You're just controlling the conversation the way you want it.
And nothing, it could be anything. You can make anything. You could be anybody you want to be.
Exactly.
And then you have to meet the person and you're not that person. And it's a problem.
I came to a talk here from an author called Daniel Amen. He's written a few books on the brain and so on, and among his books, I remember reading something along the lines of that the text message gives a level of pressure that hits the brain in the same spot where drugs and alcohol and gambling stimulates the brain.
Wow.
So there's in fact an addiction, which is a physical addiction, created by the texting and the waiting of getting that additional email just to see what's happening, and it just develops that pattern that is just as I don't know if it's as bad as drugs, but you know, it just kind of hits the same place, and it sort of explains a little bit that addiction that we have become addicted to.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pervasive, and it happened in like 3 years.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
Is this avoidance of connection?
That's the whole point, that no one's present anymore. They're these human beings who should be connecting. And by the way, we have such powers of connection, we don't realize how connected we really are. That these iPhones are really actually mirrors of the intuitive connection you already have with people. All right? How profound that connection is, we don't develop that skill. All right? And so you're so right on the point. It's all about connection and the lack of it. If you really love someone, if you're connected to anyone, you can think about them, that thought is sent to them automatically, and it's delivered already. It's delivered. You don't need this phone. You don't need any device. You've delivered it already. And the message comes back if you're attuned to that person. Anyone you're really connected with, and this happens to people all the time. You know, I was thinking of someone, all of a sudden they call. They say, I was thinking of you. Yeah, this is not magic, folks. This is not magic. It's human connectivity. It's the powers that are already latent in our being that we don't know anything about. That we have these. And that love that we send out to someone, you're thinking of someone, you're sending out powerful thoughts of love. That is received so powerfully by that other person. We don't realize how powerful our intentions are when we send them out. And that's all part of connectivity. And that person that you send it to will immediately start thinking of you in positive ways. Right at that moment. And that's how powerful these, so all the technologies are taking away, they're actually drawing us apart and taking us away from the capacity we have as humans that we're not developing. Right. You know the story of indigenous people in Africa, not Africa, but in Australia, that they were all very psychically developed. They all had these powers and would communicate with each other telepathically. It was just like a normal thing. Everybody knew it. Everybody had that ability. They all communicated that way, and it was 100%. The more you use that, the clearer it gets, and the more precise it is. And these are just latent abilities that humans have, because ultimately, from a spiritual point of view, if you're looking at things from the deep, deep spiritual point, we're already connected. It's just reconnecting, finding that connection process. So you're so right on about that. Yeah.
I saw something in the library the other day. It was a children's library group. And there was a 2-year-old, and they handed her a book, and she went like this. And then she put the book down. And the mother goes, "Oh, this is a book." And that was really sad to me. So I'm thinking of the touch. You know, the best thing about reading a book is the smell and touching it, and you know, and they teach that in school, like which way the book opens. You know, but this was a 2-year-old at a library time, and the mother didn't, you know. I mean, so I think it's more than just the social media. I think it's they just don't use it. When you're talking about like what you send out, kind of like the book The Secret.
Yeah.
Like what you send out comes back to you.
Yeah. Well, the book The Secret really is a kind of what I call the popular version of the law of karma.
Yeah.
It's the popular version, the law of karma, which is basically saying that, look, whatever you send out there is coming back to you. And it's coming back to you. And what actually happens from a universal point of view is that, let's say I have a positive thought, I send it out. It actually goes out there and resonates with all the other positive thoughts in the atmosphere, and then comes back with 7-fold positivity. So if you're in an upward trend, then that joy becomes more and more positive, and you keep attracting that into your lives. And we know that as our lifestyles change, we begin to attract different people into our sphere of influence, and simply by the actions that we are doing, which are a result of our thoughts. But on the other side, if we're putting out a lot of negative thoughts, that goes out there and resonates with all of it, and there are plenty of negative thoughts out there, folks. Just come to New York City if you want to check it out. Because in New York City, you can actually feel the vibrational shift as you get close. You can actually feel it. If you're into it, you can feel it. You can feel it. There's a vortex of energy that you're getting into, which completely sucks people in. So that negative energy is gonna come back to you also.
Good or bad? What do you mean?
It doesn't matter, good or bad, whatever you're sending out is coming back to you. But from the point of New York City, negative. There's a very strong negative, very powerful negative energy. There's positive stuff going on in New York, but when you come into those, there's just a very heavy energy, and it sucks people right into it. All right.
Can I ask a
Um,
question about that? Did you notice that as much before 9/11? Do you think that could have influenced it?
If anything, it's probably gotten better since 9/11, because there have
But
been more
prior to
community.
9/11, was there
Yeah.
as much negativity? Because there's so much fear.
I try to stay out of that, but.
Oh, I'm sorry, then
But
erase.
My own feeling is that having lived in many places, and that when I used to commute into New York, before I actually bought a place there, that I could just feel like this, it was like a feeling of intense, a lot of very strong intensity and stress, and would take me out of my center. So, and I noticed that, but as you live there, you acclimate to that situation, and you don't notice it as much. But there's tons of just the concrete, the heaviness of the city, and that's the nature of it. This is why if you live in the city, you have to acclimate, and you have to find ways to balance your energy. But that is still there. There's a tremendous vortex. I mean, that city doesn't sleep. It goes all night long, and you know what's going on all night long. The bars are open all night long, the discotheques, all of this stuff's going on. So there's no rest to that energy. So, which is not to say there aren't tremendously positive people and wonderful people. It just depends on who you are, but that's the general. That's the general. It's not like coming up to Kabbalah, which the minute you walk in the door, there's a different energy here. Very perceptible, I think. You're going to see, it says, Awaken the Mindful Self, exercise 4. You see that? And what I'm going to ask you to do is just read it and make your own list of self-limiting beliefs. So I'm talking about a little bit in this next session. So this is page 13. Just read it. Talking about the beliefs, habituated, reactive, conditioned patterns that kind of are dictating our lives that we're not aware of. And everybody has their own set of what I call these self-limiting beliefs. Typically, they sound like this. I'm not good enough. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good looking enough. I didn't study enough. But they can get much more subtle than that, right? And these are underlying beliefs that actually undermine our efforts to be more mindful and aware. I was with my spiritual teacher once, and he said something that was very powerful that stuck with me for many, many years and still stays with me. He said, the word impossible is found only in the dictionary of fools. And it challenged me to really look at what was holding me back. What are the self-limiting beliefs that are holding each and every one of us back? Because they're there. And those are the beliefs that prevent us from being not only mindful, but not only present, but joyful and happy at the same time. We have sometimes, through a parental influence or a societal influence, a message was given to us when we were young or in our developmental stages in high school. And in the very vulnerable moments of our life, we took in that message. Like, you'll never be successful in that. Or, don't even think about doing that. And we took those in our own way, and they became part of who we are. And so we're afraid to do certain things. We don't think we have that ability. We don't think we have that talent. Or we don't think we have that expertise, or whatever it is. But most importantly, it undermines our own self-worth as a human being. So I want us to just sit back and reflect and come up with your own list of, and we all have them. And they can be very subtle. Your own list of self-limiting beliefs that are undermining what you really want to do in your life and how you really want to be present in this life. And examine them for a few minutes. I would say the hardest part of what we're doing this weekend is identifying those. Because those are, they're like the superstructure that prevents us from getting out of the boxes. I'm talking about re-scripting. What's your name tag?
Allison.
Allison? Okay, I want to heart rate. Thank you, Allison. Yeah, if you, just so until I get to know everybody. So we're talking about re-scripting, right? The step after identifying those areas is to identify what are the self-limiting beliefs that prevent us from re-scripting, right? Because if we're going to go through this process, you really got to believe that it's going to work. And if we don't think it's going to work, then whatever efforts we make, we've already undermined ourselves. You follow what I mean? I'll give you an example before we do the exercise. Human beings tend to do things where they seem to get results. A lot of times the results that we were given or that we perceived were negative, but we took them in a positive way. For example, this is a true story. There was a show I was watching Oprah once, and there was this lady who was about 36, 37 years old. And she was on the show because she had this habit that she couldn't get rid of. And this habit was whining. She was a super whiner. She had perfected the art of whining. And she had become so good at it that when she was a little kid, that she could get her way with her parents. Anything she wanted, she got her way. She got to be a high school kid. She did it with her friends, and she got her way. When she got married, she said, this is working for me. So anytime she wanted to get things done in her way, she would start to whine at her. She was such a good whiner, like the super whiner. She would just go into the, no, please, you know, do this, and about that whine tone. And her husband would cave in because nobody wanted to listen to this. And normally whining, you know, as a developmental phase may stop, what, 9, 10, 11, 12 grade, 13-year-old.
Hopefully sooner than that.
Sooner than that.
4 or 5.
4 or 5, okay.
No.
Limiting life. But this person was developed this at 35. She was still doing it at 35 and 36. Why? Because it produced results. And this is what has happened with us. We develop certain behaviors that have produced results, but they're really self-limiting. They're conditioning us. And we've got to examine that. That's why I say it's subtle. It's not so obvious. But those are the ones that kind of create the superstructure of our perceived personality that we got to examine. So that's what I'm going to do for about 5 minutes. I'm just going to put some reflective music on here, contemplative music, and maybe that will engender some deep memories. Okay.
But she couldn't have succeeded in that unless she found people along the way that would accommodate her.
Yeah, that's the other part of it, of course, that she got to the age of 35 because she just happened to meet the people who could not deal with that and would cave in. They had their own weaknesses, which supported hers and her self-limiting beliefs. And but reality is sometimes we attract that. We attract people who are also functioning in those other similar self-limiting beliefs as our own, and vibrationally.
की करे बेबू किंदा काल कुआरी काया जुगतंड परती आय पंते सगल जमाती मन जीते जग जी आदेश से आदेश आदनील नादना जुग जुग एको विस मुंदा संतोष सरंपत चोली ध्यान की करे बेबू किंदा काल कुआरी काया जुगतंड परती आय पंते सगल जमाती मन जीते जग जी आदेश से आदेश आदनील नादना जुग जुग एको विस आदेश से आदेश आद अनिल अनाद अनाहत जुग जुग एको वेस आदेश से आदेश आद अनिल अनाद अनाहत जुग जुग एको वेस आदेश से आदेश आद अनिल अनाद अनाहत जुग जुग एको वेस आदेश से आदेश आद अनिल अनाद अनाहत जुग जुग एको वेस आदेश से आदेश आद अनिल अनाद अनाहत जुग जुग एको वेस आदेश से आदेश आद अनिल अनाद अनाहत जुग जुग एको वेस आदेश से आदेश आद अनिल अनाद अनाहत जुग जुग एको वेस
meditative, no doubt. So what I'd like to do is take us in a little different journey here. Same focus. And talk about one of the other really kind of monumental things we have to grapple with to be fully mindful. So we've talked about worries, talked about hurries, we talked about fears and regrets, talked about getting out of the rat race mentality, accepting life as it is, and bringing joy into the present moment. And all of that is conditioned upon some deep healing also. So one of the things that prevents us from being mindful, present, to enjoy life, to be present, to joyful, is that we have deep-seated, unresolved grief. All of us carry it at very fundamental and deep levels. And to be fully present, we need to release that. Release the painful effects of the past that we haven't let go of. And actually, that's the healing we took birth for. Let me say it again. That's the healing we took birth for. And the relationships that are still raw or still unhealed are the places that are holding us back from being fully mindful and fully present, because they're behind us and pulling our attention. Let me give you a little simple example. Banal but simple. Get up in the morning, start to go to work, and you leave home and your husband or wife says something that you forgot to do. And you promised that you were going to do it. And they get on your case for not doing that. And, you know, there's only a few minutes, you got to get out of the house, you got to run, so you... But irritable, you're a little irritable now because of that comment. And there was no time to resolve it, talk about it, because you're running, right? And you're driving to work, and all of a sudden, someone in front of you, all right, suddenly stops, right? And you're this close to hitting them, rear-ending them. So now you got a little bit more anxiety added to that, right? You get to work, and the first thing that happens is someone at your job comes over to you, your supervisor or whatever, and says, look, you made this huge mistake. So what are you going to do about this? This is going to cost the company big time, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You fill in the scenario, right? And now that little irritability and that little near accident, all of a sudden, you are out of your space, right? Yeah, you meditated in the morning, you did your affirmations, you went all that, and now you're all of a sudden you're out of your space, right? And the day goes on kind of like that. And your boss yells at you, and you come home, you come at the end of the day, and you haven't had a moment to breathe or debrief. And the first thing out of your mouth, involuntarily, is something really stupid that you say to someone you really love. And that starts a major argument, which doesn't get resolved that night, and both people go to bed really upset. Okay? We've all been through it. We know what it is, right? That builds into unhealed relationships over time. So it's like every one of those events took a little piece of your heart out, and at the end of the day, you have this little kind of shattered piece called a heart of a few fragments left. And that's how much energy you have left to be present, which is practically zero, because nothing has been healed. So what happens over years is these things mount up. These unhealed feelings mount up. And instead of coming into the day with a full heart, we come in with a fragmented heart. And what we don't realize is that all of those unhealed relationships, whether they have gone out of your life or not, are the missing parts of your heart that you don't have anymore. So as a result, we can't love anybody fully anymore because we haven't healed all those places in our lives. Can't be fully present anymore because all of that stuff is still gnawing away at us. And we've got to work on those unhealed relationships. Even if that person isn't even alive anymore. Could be a grandfather, a mother, a father who passed on. But the way that the relationship ended, there was not a closure. There was not healing in that relationship. There was not a connection that was positive. Those energies are pulling us away, calling out to us saying, come back, and look at me. And deal with me. So we have to look at those, and this is where the heavy lifting comes. This is where we really have to go deep, because to go deep is to go present. And we have to look at this. We're going to look at some of those things. And I want to begin the story, this little journey here, with a little story about Buddha and the mustard seed. Does anyone know that story about Buddha and the mustard seed? It's a classic story on this theme. So there was a lady who had a child, very young. And the child died shortly after it was born, like 3 or 4 months after it was born. And anyone who's a mother or known a little bit about motherhood knows that one of the greatest griefs that a mother can bear is the dying of a child shortly after birth, 3 or 4 months, a year after birth. But the attachment is so powerful. And so this woman was in a state of total anguish and grief. And she came to Buddha and asked Buddha, oh, bring back my child. You know. She was weeping, she was wailing, she just couldn't find the doorway out of that. And so she was begging, believing that Buddha could bring the child back to life. Not in a sarcastic way, mocking, but really believed it, that the Buddha could do this. And the Buddha agreed. He said, okay, I'll bring your child back to life, but on one condition. I want you to go and get me a mustard seed from the home in which nobody has seen death. And she was so excited, oh my God, I'm going to get my child back. This is wonderful. And she begins her journey, and she goes from town to town. And she would knock on the door and say, do you have a mustard seed? Sure, we have a mustard seed. And by the way, have you, anyone in your family or your seen death? And he said, of course. And she went from one place after the other place after the other place. And finally she realized, she got the teaching. She realized, wait a second, this is universal. Everybody's seen death. She comes back to the Buddha, and the Buddha said, well, what happened? He said, I found plenty of mustard seeds, but nobody who has not seen or experienced the grief of death. And she understood that things change. Nothing is permanent here. Nothing is going to last. And this is one of the most important realizations we talk about in Buddhism, that everything is transitory and impermanent. But it is precisely because of its transitoriness and impermanence that we have to pay attention to what is happening, because it doesn't last long, and we have to deal with it now. Because if we don't, those things will hold on to us. And if that woman had not gone to Buddha and dealt with that and resolved that grief and understood what the teaching was, she would be hanging on to it for God knows how long. So this is the deep healing that we need to look at in terms of our own journey. That are really, and when we release those, it's like we took a 10-ton bricks off of our back. And how that healing takes place, we'll talk more about that, what we can do to really release those so that we can really be present for the people who are still in our lives and fully present with them with the full capacity to love. Remember, be here now, be happy now, be love now. Can't be love now until we've done some of this unearthing and grief work that is still very deep within us. It's probably the hardest thing in the world to do, but it's probably the most important thing that we can do, because it's what keeps us from being fully present with the people that we want to be fully present with, and to be fully loving and being at our best for those people. Now, I want to share with you something that, what's your name?
Amy.
Amy, put your tag out so I
It's
can
here.
see you. Yeah, thank you, I couldn't
Hi.
see it. Amy was sharing with me something that she has done, and I'm just going to turn the floor over to you just to share a little bit about your hospice work, and I'll tie it into what we're talking about here, if you don't mind. Would you do that?
Well, when you're talking about, and I've forgotten your term, but in the nursing world, it's called active listening. You
Right.
called it
Conscious and compassionate listening.
passionate listening. And, even in nursing world, we're kind of beaten over the head with that. I found that I still brought to the table this desire to fix situations. And I'd listen, and then I would quickly want to interject my solution. And about a year ago, the opportunity to volunteer for hospice jumped off the page at me, and I went through the training and have been doing it for a year. And I have to say, there's no better tool to selfishly teach one how to be, a true active listener without any agenda, with a multitude of different personalities and situations. You don't know what you're walking into. You don't know the needs of the person. You can't fix anything. And you better not be there to say anything that comes from your own mind, really. You're really reflective and just there as a support. And you also don't know what you may be able to provide, and it's subtle. So I hadn't really thought of this practice as being a mindfulness training for me, but it really is when you brought that up. And I thought, I know people say that all the time, that I get more out of it than they do, but it's truly true, especially from a perspective of teaching one how to be extremely present, quiet, subtly helpful. And of course you walk away. How can you not be mindful of our existence and time that we have here, after spending time with people who are at the end of life. So, and it is not a sad chore. It is not at all morose. It's uplifting. Nothing will make you feel more alive and purposeful.
Yeah, that's funny, because, the irony is that you'd think people who are doing hospice work are kind of morbid, must be morbid people or something. They want to be around death. But really, it's the exact opposite.
It is, yeah. I agree.
It's an affirmation of life.
Mm.
And I've been doing hospice volunteer work for about 35 years. My spiritual teacher recommended it.
Mm-hmm.
Buddhist teachings, many, many traditions. Why? Because you can only, in the presence of someone who has very little time, there can be no phoniness. There can be no not presentness, because they have no time for people who are not present. They have so little time left. All of the silliness has got to go out the door, because they want you to be fully there for them. And here's the connection to the healing. It is when we're fully there for people that the healing takes place. So if we're fully there for them in the hospice situation, being present without agenda, all right, there's a healing that can take place. And what often happens is they start to talk about things in their past that they need to get and release now. And they know it.
And resolve.
And they need to get it out. And this has happened many, many, many times. I can't believe how, you will not believe how close a relation can be formed to someone who like that, who needs a place to let go of that and has not had the opportunity in their life to do that. The system requires it almost. It's like you can't go, because all of that we carry with us if we don't. So here's the $100,000 question.
Do it now.
Thank you. What are you waiting for?
Oh my God.
Do you have any guarantees you'll be here tomorrow, folks? Do you? Is there anyone here can guarantee they're gonna be here tomorrow? I can't guarantee it. And let me ask you again, are you ready to go tomorrow? Because if you are, you're healed. 2 steps in this journey. We need to look at those relationships that we need to go back to and heal. And if that person is gone, then we need to do a healing in an interior sense. And we can talk about that. If they're here but not part of our lives, we need to, do whatever the situation demands. But if they're still part of our lives, we need to do that healing. And we need to take time to do that healing. It's very, very important. It could be the person that you're married with still, right now. But there's unresolved stuff that has just been sitting there, all right, that no one wants to look at because it's too heavy. But it's that stuff that is preventing us from being truly happy and wonderful and loving people that we can be. Stephen Levine, who I happen to know is a friend of mine, wrote a book called If You Only Had 1 Year Left to Live. What would you do? Who would you see? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to tell the people you love that you love them. Because we never do that. Or so very seldomly. Or with very little meaning. Right? So we want to look into these are the things that we want to explore in this next little session here. So I'd like you to go back to your group. Let's go back to the same groups that your groups of 5. And here's how I'd like you to explore this. This is obviously very sensitive material. And very, very, it's difficult for us to talk about. And open up to. And you've just met some people here, so it's going to be, it's a challenge. So here's how I'd like you to frame it, all right? I'd like you to think about the general areas just amongst yourselves, first, amongst yourself, and just jot down where you think those are.
General
And
areas of what?
Areas where you need to go back and rethink a relationship, all right? And just jot it down
Like
for
an
you.
example of an area.
For example, okay, a brother that, or a sister that you've been out of touch for a long time because of a argument that you had 15 years ago. Like, these are real scenarios. This happens so often. And you've not reconnected with them. And you kind of let it go because life moved on and you never had a chance, or you didn't take the time, or things came up, or you moved away, or so on and so forth, right? And you know that there's a need to go back to that situation, right? And to jot those situations down for yourself where you would want to go back, where you want to. And then to share, and here's the important part, to share how is the best way to go back to do that. And share what you would do to make that into a better situation. And that's the wisdom we want to share with the group, right? It's not easy, but it's necessary. And how do you go about doing that is the hard part, is that how do you open that door in a sensitive way? So you want to think about the positive ways that maybe you've already done it in the past, because we have done this before, all right, in which you've been successful as a way to start. Always start with success stories. And by the way, going back to the scripting process, and we'll go this a little bit more linear process for you. The process of tapping into where you have been successful is part of your scripting process. Okay. So I'm thinking about how did I deal with this relationship that I was successful in healing, right? I'm just giving you an example. Well, one day I decided to call that person up and get a conversation going, all right? For something that was not, it's not like you're going to hit them with the whole thing at first, but you want to get a conversation going. And from that conversation, we went out to eat, and we sat down. And naturally, some of the issues started to arise. And instead of my old reaction to those issues, I came there with non-judgmental awareness of that other person. So that would be an example of how that scenario might take place. It could be writing a letter to someone who refuses to communicate with us, right? This happens a lot. People who don't even want to be in our lives anymore, but we need to communicate, we write them a letter. And we send that letter off first mentally, with all of the love and healing that we can send, and then physically. And even if the person doesn't respond, what you've done is you've released it. Because we can't control, it's not like every relationship is going to be healed on the other end. It's got to be healed on our end. You follow the difference? Because we cannot control their behavior, how they're going to respond to this. But we can control and let go of the pain and the grief that is holding us back from our present relationships. You follow the difference here, what I'm saying? Because it's very different than trying to change their behaviors and make them like you again or want to be around you. You have no control of that. Maybe that relationship is over. But the healing has to take place so that there's no ill will, there's no pain associated with that. And when you think of that person, there's nothing but you're sending out joy. Sending out joy. There's no negative reactions. Okay? I know this is a task, isn't
Can
it?
we do smaller groups?
Yeah, okay, let's
Like
do smaller
5
groups.
might be a little bit too much
So
for all
3 or
of us.
2? How would you like? 3?
Is probably
Okay. So why don't you self-select, into groups of 3. And if you want to do 2, that's fine. But I think 3 is good. And start with the conversations where you have been successful, okay? Because it's always good to start with the positive, all right? And so, yeah, so maybe groups of 3. We have groups of 2. We have 3 and 3 here? 3 and 3? And then you 3 here, is that good?
Yeah.
So you're over here, and you're over here. So we got 3, and we got a group of 2. That's okay, right? Right? So again, start with where you've been successful, all right? Start with where you have been successful in dealing with a difficult relationship that you've been able to heal, and what you did to get there, all right? And let the conversation flow out of that. Where I've been successful in a past relationship that was very troubled or difficult, and what I did that I knew worked that you want to share with the group. And then let the conversation go wherever it goes, okay? Are we all kind of clear on that?
Yeah,
All right?
we have one question though.
Sure,
Yeah.
only one?
How do you find, of course, I'm in this group. How do you find the questions, how do you find what you need to resolve?
Okay.
How do you
That,
know
I
the
think
answer?
that's the inquiry. That is the inquiry. Okay, so, yeah. And
Not
a lot of
conscious
times
of
it's
it,
not
what is it?
clear.
Yes.
Yes, and I think that's where you need to do the work. Because I couldn't, all I can say is go into the relationship and explore the relationship and say, okay, what was it about the ending of that relationship that I still don't understand? For example, I know a friend who has very, very close to, it was like a teacher-disciple relationship in one was a music teacher and the other was and they were very close. And all of a sudden that relationship ended. And she was so close to that person. And she could never figure out why this person just didn't want to have anything to do with her anymore. Because up until that moment, their relationship was so positive, all right? And they had so much respect, so she couldn't ever figure it out. It took her years to go back, but when she went back and she looked at it, she realized that there was something that was going on all the time that she just was not aware of, all right? And she was still not able to go back to that person. She wrote a letter to that person, she never got a response back, but she was able to identify what was going on in the relationship that she had been unmindful of, that she had been unaware of, and kind of release it and let it go and say, okay, and not blame herself, because she was blaming herself.
So it's really relationships that you're looking for?
Well, grief can be around a lot of things. It can be in relationships, it can be anything. It could be career-wise. Give you an example. You're at the end of your career, or you're near the end of your career, or you're in the middle of your career, and something happens that you really throws you for a tremendous loop, right? And maybe you're forced to change jobs, and you haven't let go of that supervisor who was responsible for you having to completely leave the job or something like that, right? So it could be in many areas. That's still around relationship, but this is more career, right? So many issues around children, as you know. All right? That's an easy one. There's so many issues around, I mean, many things, all right? There's unresolved grief around our own self-image. That's why we started this off with self-limiting beliefs, okay? Is that helping you, hopefully? But you're open to explore whatever seems to be in the moment. Stay in touch with your heart and let your heart dictate what comes up. That's appropriate. Yeah.
Are you saying that all relationships that may have ended badly or where there's something that need to be resolved?
I'm saying that if we are holding unresolved grief.
I think that's the question. How do you
Yeah, how do you know if you are?
Okay, how do you know if
That
you're
was the
Oh, I see, that's the question. How do you know if you're heart?
Yeah.
You know, only you and your heart know that. And I can tell you one exercise you can do. You can close your eyes, you can picture that person, and what is your immediate thought?
That's a good one.
Okay?
A dartboard?
Okay, I think you got your answer.
There's your answer.
I'm just kidding, but that's what you mean, right?
Yeah. So the idea is that, you know, what we're getting at here is that these things mount up, they pile up. And we stick it in the attic. And the attic is filled with so much garbage, it's now coming down into the living room. And it's getting, when the basement's coming up, and now there's no room in the kitchen, there's no room for us to move around anymore. We're not emotionally free anymore. And we're not open to being the most loving people we can, because we're still, and they're subtle, because these things are strings like, how many of you know Feng Shui, right? Right, everyone knows Feng Shui. Feng Shuis are objects have strings to you, right? Well, guess what? So do humans. They got strings to you, and if you haven't healed that relationship, that string is a negative string. And it's holding you, it's pulling you. All right? So we have to be opening to look at that and clearing it. Again, it's not about changing their behavior. It's about letting it go, and in our hearts, not pushing them away. All right? And to give you the meta picture here, we're all one. We've just forgotten our oneness. So anyone you push out of your heart involuntarily is a veil between you and your higher self.
Oh, gosh. My mother-in-law? I'm with you on that.
It's good to have humor.
Sad but true, yeah.
It's good to have humor. So let's take a few moments and give yourself some time on this one. All right? Bold and get up there and give us your life wisdom in a thank you very much, Ron. Yeah. Right. I know this group was
Heavy.
profound. Let's say profound. Not heavy, light and profound.
Yeah.
Okay.
And light, because there's been a lot of pain and a lot of wounding. And some of the wounding happened a long time ago, and some of it happened not a long time ago, but to get to a point of, we want to get to a point of letting go of the pain. And the ways to do that is through forgiveness, through acknowledgement that the pain that happened to us wasn't our fault. But to take a lot of this old stuff that we've been holding on to and bring it, the term we use, from bringing it out of the darkness and putting it into the light. And that's what we're doing by interacting, by talking, by opening up to each other, by acknowledging it, and by accepting it. But
You put three big ones up there. Huge, mega. Starting with forgiveness, letting go, and acknowledgement. Wow. You couldn't have done that, really. And taking the darkness into the light. Which for me, and I heard part of the conversation, is to recognize that consciousness is the healer. Let me say that again. Consciousness is the healer. Awareness of it is the healer. You're bringing awareness into it. Awareness is light and love. You're bringing awareness and light and love into the healing process. The minute you let it go, acknowledge it, that it's there, all right? And if you can do the previous step, which is forgiveness, you're a long way done with the healing process. So that was profound and amazing, and thank you so much. And we're all learning so much from each other. So, thank you. Yeah.
So I came on Sunday for an EMDR training, which is trauma therapy training, and as a psychologist I work with this a lot, and I see how effective some of these principles can be. And for me, my kind of big experience in my life that really has held me back is my mother died when I was 5. And as a child, my experience of that was abandonment, that she left me because I was not lovable. So kind of carrying that through life of I'm not lovable, I'm not lovable. And so a part of the way that I've dealt with that, and we just worked on this last week, was first you experience the emotion fully. So you're not afraid of it anymore. So the pain and the hurt and allowing that to come up and sitting with that, because emotions, recognizing that emotions are transitory, they won't stay unless you keep pushing them away, because then they will come back. And I kind of relate it to if you have a dog and you tell your dog, bad, you pooped on the floor, right? And your dog cowers, and then 10 seconds later it's back wagging its tail because it doesn't hold on to emotion. It just comes and it goes. And I think that's how we're meant to experience emotion, but we get caught up in our heads of, I'm not lovable, see, they don't love me, they just rejected me, and that hurts, and I don't like them anymore, right? So it perpetuates all that emotion of pain. So the first part of it is experiencing the emotion and being okay with it, and just, like you said, this too shall pass. It's just an emotion, it will come. And you might have a total meltdown and cry and whatever, but it's okay, because that's kind of the emotion passing through and you letting it go. And then the next part is kind of that acknowledgement, like you were saying, acknowledging, maybe from a more mature perspective, actually what happened. You know, that you are lovable, that these circumstances just happened, or they have, you know, their own issues, and the relationship kind of, the dynamic of it, whatever it is. So kind of acknowledging really from a different perspective. And then the last part of that we do is to, in our minds, then visualize some kind of resolution. Okay, so in my instance, it was my mother coming to me as a child and saying, I do love you so much, and I hate to leave you, and you're the best thing that, you know, and all, this whole kind of visualization, because the brain doesn't really recognize between what's a real memory and what's a visualization. And so to ingrain something new, and it's really does work, because then when you bring up the old stuff, you don't feel it's not the intensity of the emotion is no longer there. So that process is it's not easy, because you do have to kind of feel it and let it go, but it's a very interesting process that seems to be pretty effective. So.
Beautiful, wonderful. And could you add that little piece there, which is that visualizing, and I want to talk more about that too, that healing that is taking place, right? Which is, don't underestimate the power of visualization to create the emotions that you want. The emotions are connected to images. And so you're creating the positive images around which that healing can then begin, right? So would you like to continue?
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll go into this later, but I thought that was a really powerful statement, that the mind doesn't distinguish between.
It is.
But you know, I mean, your mind does know, right?
Well, it's, you know, when you have these memories, they are deeply ingrained in your brain, okay? So you have a neurological pathway that is there. But what you can do is, as you let it go, you can create a new neurological pathway, which is that visualization. So you might not just visualize it once. It may be something that you work with, you meditate on, you know, for however much you want, but, so it just creates a different neurological pathway, which can completely change your perspective on yourself, the world, I mean, all
Wow.
kinds of things, so
Mm.
it can be very powerful, yeah.
Thank you.
Indeed, indeed. So let's, if we don't finish everybody, we'll come back and we'll complete this, because I know it's just 5 minutes before 11:30, and I don't want to hold you back for lunch. But would you like to share anything
I
else?
think just, I think what we talked about in terms of the healing experience was acceptance.
Yes.
That was certainly the theme of the acceptance of who that other person is, and without judgment, without expectations. And, when you can, to begin to, use problem-solving skills, communication, to work on healing it. But if you can't, just to accept that person for who they are. And also the idea, to some degree, of choices and limit setting. If there's somebody in your life that is draining and you've made an effort to set limits or communicate and it doesn't change, then you do have choices to let go or put boundaries up. I think, the other theme that came up in terms of difficulties, and I think it's the two of us share this, is that when there's people that are involved in your life who are difficult, you can't get rid of, whether it's an ex-spouse and you share children, or it's, another example is a sister who has children and you're connected to the nieces and nephews or whatever, and there's problems in the relationship, and they're not going to change despite feedback, despite whatever, and yet their behavior is affecting you directly or affecting those you love. And that anger that comes up, not so much, I can only speak for myself, but not so much that I would expect that person to change. I think I've got that, but when their behavior affects innocent children, my anger comes up every single time, and the difficulty in letting go of that, and I still struggle with it. So I can almost, if there weren't people involved that got affected, I really think I'd be able to say, well, choices are choices, I don't have control over that person, but when I see it pains an innocent child, I'm right back to being angry.
This is profound stuff, and there are no easy answers to everything. I want to respect our time frame here and just kind of come back to this rather than try to bring closure to this right now, because there's too much on the plate right now. And I think it's good we take a little break from it and just get some perspective too. But I just want to say two things that you can walk out with. The humans want love. Humans are love. And our need for unconditional love is the primary drive of our beingness. In fact, just about everything we do is to get some kind of positive acknowledgement, whether it's our career or our family or other relationships. We're seeking that. The reality is that we're already that already. And what we're really trying to do in this healing process is to recognize that I need to be who I am. The sun shines. The sun doesn't care if people like it or not. Doesn't care if it's cloudy out. Who gets the sun or who doesn't get the sun? The sun does what the sun does. When we come to that deep realization that that's what we are, these little drops of love, because we're clear in our being that that's who we are, then we do it. We don't care what anything else happens. And getting to that point is this healing journey. We've got to let go through forgiveness, by letting go, by totally accepting everyone's humanity, that they've all made mistakes. Everybody's saying we're making mistakes, and therefore we're not going to judge anybody. I have a saying that came from my spiritual teachers: don't try to be the unpaid apprentices of the CIA of God.
Wow.
I'll say it again, don't try to be the unpaid apprentices of the CIA of God. Our job is not justice. The healing stops as soon as we want justice.
Yeah. Yeah.
The healing stops, by the way, and so does your spiritual journey. Okay? Just as an addendum. End of story, no more spiritual progress. The minute we want, that's not our job. They got other people doing that. All right? So, to be in that space, to get through that space of healing, we're just going to be who we are. And we're going to identify with the attributes that we already are. And that's what the healing journey will take you to. We let go. We accept people for their mistakes because we expect them to accept them for our mistakes. No one's perfect. We're all imperfect. We're all falling all the time. We're all making mistakes all the time. All right? And when we deeply get that, you know what? The justice and the retribution, the need for retribution or anger disappears. Because we say, okay, that's their karma. We're not going to be judged on their karma. So Gandhi kind of summarized it in a sentence. He said, be the change you seek. It's that simple. All right?
Say it again, please.
Be the change you seek. My spiritual teacher said something very profound that completely altered my whole life. He said, you don't need to say anything. You know, we think we need words. What we need is the love behind the words. So if you are living it, you know what? Change people through radiation. Your words are the effect. They only carry as much weight as the thoughts that are behind them, the purity of your thought, and the love behind them. And that's why you can go into the presence of some people and feel healed. They didn't say a thing. But you feel their energy has healed you. So our journey is to heal ourselves first. And in healing ourselves first, we come into that place of non-judgmental awareness. Then that's mindfulness of other people. And that's the place where be here now, be happy now, and be loved now. So let's just close with like a minute of silence and to take a little bit of this in and walk out with a big smile on your face. So just close your eyes very gently. And bring your attention to what we call the seat of the soul, which is lying directly between your two eyes in the center of your forehead. And I want you to just take a moment to deeply relax. And this time, offer a spontaneous prayer out to the universe, starting with your immediate family, and just send that love out. Send that forgiveness out. Send that total acceptance out. And the Buddhists use a prayer called, may all beings be happy. May all beings be at peace. If you're comfortable with that, you can say that or anything else. And then take it out a couple of notches to your nearest community, extended family, and so on and so forth. So just do this for about a minute.
Oh.